I don't understand, and I'm going to feel ignorant saying this. I don't understand the term the opioid crisis. Like I know it's a fun talking point for certain politicians, and they're making some movies out of it. And some pharmaceutical companies, got sued and had to pay big settlements. But I don't understand what that means, the opioid crisis. Because in my mind, opioids are like a legal version or a dumbed down version of heroin, effectively. Kind of comes from the same family, and like you can get addicted to it. But I don't understand the history of what happened and what the crisis is and what the scope of the problem is. But the fact that you mentioned it, like people die from that, and it's a bigger deal than weed. Can you give us like the 5-minute version of the history and what happens when people get addicted and why it's such a big deal in kind of the public zeitgeist right now?
Sure. Yeah. So I think right now, opioid crisis is probably being overlooked by a lot of other issues we have right now in terms of like economic stimulus and inflation and things. But it used to be like the thing that everyone was talking about. And so the idea is that we kind of sway to these extremes as a country of like opioids are great and then opioids are terrible. And we're now going into the opioids are terrible phase. In the early 90s, opioids are great. Pain was the fifth vital sign, like all these things. And so now I don't know all the numbers, but there are a lot of people, like millions of Americans, who are addicted to opiates, which are synthetic or semi-synthetic versions of opium, anything from fentanyl to OxyContin. And so a lot of these people are just chronically taking opioids. And when you chronically take opioids, they do no benefit. In fact, the main thing that they do is lower your testosterone as a male, but other effects is that you get memory loss, you increase your risk of cancer. And a lot of people who chronically take opioids see them as pain pills because they think it takes their pain away. But all it does, it's like when you drink coffee every day, all it does is bring you back to where you would be if you never took opiates. And so I've detoxed people who are taking the equivalent of 9,000 milligrams of morphine a day, and they felt better.
Wait, doesn't that kill you? Doesn't 9,000 milligrams kill you?
No, yeah. Well, if you slowly taper up because you're in pain, so you take more. You're in pain and you take more. You get tolerant to the effects. Over a period of months or even years, you can ramp up from where maybe the equivalent of 80 milligrams of morphine a day would have like killed you, to where 8,000 milligrams of morphine doesn't do anything for you anymore. And so that's how you get the crisis, is because people get tolerant to those effects, and for them to be pain-free, they have to continually take more.
So I had a friend in the Army who came into the Army as a last resort, or else he was going to jail. It was basically the late 2000 or the late 90s. 2001 had not happened yet, so there wasn't this like get back at the Taliban, esprit de corps, I'm going to join the military. So the military was taking some borderline people, and he was a big time heroin addict, got busted for like the third time, and they were like, "Hey man, jail or military, you decide." So he described to me, and maybe this is the thing that affects the opioid crisis. He decided to join the Army, not because he was going to go to jail again, but because several of his friends had OD'd. And the way that he explained it to me is like heroin is this fascinating drug that what gets you high today won't get you high tomorrow. Yeah. So you have to amp up the usage of that opioid, heroin. Yeah. And the problem is when you go to overshoot it because you think what got you high yesterday won't get you high today, so you up the dose too much, that's when people OD and they're gone. So is that kind of the same cycle that you're describing with the synthetic opioids and fentanyl and OxyContin and the stuff you're describing? Like you can ramp that up pretty significantly because what cured your pain yesterday probably won't be enough to cure your pain today?
Yeah, because you spread all these receptors in your spinal cord, and so they get saturated, and so your body just keeps making pain receptors. And that's why you keep getting in pain, is because your body's just adapting to the new norm. And so a lot of people overdose because they'll take too much because they're in too much pain, and they don't even know it. They don't even feel it. If you're taking it for like an addictive standpoint, like addiction medicine's a crazy field. It's really a disease. It's really a habit dysfunction. It's not like these people just no one wakes up in the morning and stretches their arms and say, I want like the worst thing to happen to me today. Like a lot of these people, it's just the lock and key, and they just found something that their body's just obsessed with. And so that's how a lot of them OD, is because they don't do it right, or like maybe they got it off the street and they don't know that it may be too strong than what they're used to, and they don't know, and so that is definitely an effect. So the opioid, this is my one-liner on the opioid crisis, that opioids are underprescribed in hospitals and they're overprescribed in outpatient clinics. I don't think most people, unless if you have cancer, really shouldn't be taking tons of opioids on an outpatient level.
So wait, you said it's because of the fear, because this pendulum has swung the other way towards opioids bad. You think they are probably underprescribed in the hospital setting, but overprescribed in the outpatient, you just self-medicate yourself setting. Is that what you did? Did I encapsulate what you just said correctly?
Yeah, about 40% of all opioids are prescribed by primary care physicians, and then they get them on this like terrible drug and they can't get their patients off, so they prescribe them to pain physicians. In the hospital, you need aggressive pain management, because if you have acute pain, it can progress to chronic pain if you don't get it controlled, and opioids are great for that. And so, but the problem is you see a lot of people in the hospital now who are underprescribed opioids because people are so scared shitless about them. Like people in cancer, really, like people with cancer right now are dying in hospitals in immense pain because people are worried that like they're going to get in trouble, or like that, that this person may like die from opioid overdose or something.
Right, right. And so what's a good, you just mentioned cancer, but what's see, more proof that we're always filming in my garage. I just have my 3-year-old daughter run in here and slam the door, but that's okay. No one's going to notice. You mentioned cancer as one of them, but what's a good test case for opioids? Like, my left knee's been jacked up for a decade from a whitewater rafting event that I'm in. And the doctors basically told me, hey, you have a partial tear in your meniscus. There's really no reason to go in there and do anything right now, because between the recovery and the increased performance, it's really not going to do enough. But eventually, because you keep doing jiu-jitsu and boxing and stuff, and you're getting to your mid-40s, eventually something's just going to snap and you're going to have some major surgery on your knee. So me, being an addictive personality, AKA if I go more than a day without a cigar, I start to fiend for some tobacco. What is my like risk profile? And this, of course, is not medical advice, because we're just talking. But like, should I be scared of taking opioids to get over the pain of some knee surgery because I do have an addictive personality, or is it like, hey man, take them for a week and you're going to be okay. Just don't go buy a bunch of fentanyl on the street. Like, what's the good case use for opioids?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So I have an addictive personality too. Like I'm obsessed with like crypto and like just random shit that nobody cares about. Like, because like my wife thinks I'm like on the spectrum because like I just obsess about all these things. But my advice for you is like the things you're addicted to may not translate to opioids, but like if you get knee surgery, like you should take something, because there's a percentage of people who after knee surgery get chronic pain. And a lot of the reason why is that their pain wasn't controlled right after their surgery. So if you ever get knee surgery, like let's say they do like a meniscal, like they take your medial meniscus out, or like, it sounds like you may have torn your ACL too. So like if you get an ACL reconstruction, like, you're going to be fine for 2 weeks. You're not going to become an addict after 2 weeks for sure.